Before the fall of the Ukrainian city of Mariupol, there were multiple calls to airdrop humanitarian aid and other cargo by drone. But is the technology and infrastructure ready to scale in war zones? Lieutenant Colonel Mark Jacobsen is the professor of strategy and security studies at the School of Advanced Air and Space Studies. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Mimi.
So you came to this topic during the conflict in Syria. Can you tell me what you were doing then and what was the situation you were dealing with?
Yeah, so I'm a C-17 pilot by background, so my job was delivering cargo in war zones. I was also an Arabic-speaking Middle East specialist, taking a couple years away from flying to do research on the Syrian civil war. And I was in Turkey working with Syrian refugees. And at the time, the Syrian government had started a surrender or starve campaign in which the Syrian government was starving out entire regions of urban areas to break the will of the people. And people would ask me as a cargo pilot, why doesn't the United States come in and airdrop humanitarian aid? And the short answer is that most of our air delivery capability depends on large airplanes that would get shot down in a war zone unless you go in with a major military operation to destroy air defenses. This was the 2014-15 timeframe. And it got me thinking, surely in the 21st century, there must be some way you could get aid through this contested airspace to people who need it. The United States can drop weapons anywhere in the world we want. Why can't we drop cargo? And that landed me on the idea of maybe you could use a bridge of small drones.
So where is the technology now? And does the Pentagon have the ability to deliver at least humanitarian aid by drone in a war zone?
Very limited capability. There has been a lot of experimentation. People who follow DoD innovation know that we do a ton of experimentation, a ton of R&D. There has been a lot of small-scale efforts. The Marine Corps has experimented with delivering blood and medical supplies by drone. We do have some larger systems that are optionally manned or unmanned that could potentially deliver cargo. But DoD has not really internalized and fully embraced a drone delivery capability. We're mostly in a world of experimentation. So from my view, nothing is quite ready to deploy to a war zone.
So is this an important enough capability for the U.S. to make the required investment, or are there other ways to achieve the same goals?
Well, I think we see this repeatedly in modern conflict. We saw it in Syria, we saw it in Ukraine over the last couple of months, and each time an adversary besieges innocent civilians, we hear calls for the United States and its allies to come in and do something to break sieges. I do think this is a critical capability, both for humanitarian aid, but also for battlefield resupply, as we're facing more modern states like China with the ability to prevent United States airplanes from accessing their airspace. If we need to get supplies through, we need to invest in new capabilities, potentially larger numbers of smaller systems that can kind of sneak through those defenses to move material in.
So let's take a step back and tell us, if you could, the ways that drones have been used in Ukraine and what we've learned from those use cases.
We are seeing a massive amount of experimentation with drones of all shapes and sizes in Ukraine. My specialty has been more on the small hobby side. That's where I've largely worked, where we've seen grassroots efforts to bring in off-the-shelf drones that are used for a lot of documentation of war crimes, for spotting artillery, for intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. We have not seen much experimentation with drone delivery at the small scale, I think because it's so difficult to do. And we've also seen some of these larger systems capable of real warfare and offensive engagement with Russian forces. So necessity is the mother of invention. And even though there's not been great small drone capabilities through a lot of militaries today, Ukrainians have been very ingenious in employing whatever they can find and seeing what works.
You know, one thing that's needed to make this work is addressing where to launch the drone from. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is one of the hardest parts about cargo delivery is if you're just flying a small drone to go take pictures, you can take that with you anywhere. You can launch from a field. You can stay very mobile, which is important because the Russians, for example, can, if they have a sense of where you're taking off from, they can bombard that whole area with artillery. If you want to deliver cargo to, say, break sieges, you probably have a fairly robust operation to launch cargo. You often have fixed infrastructure like runways or catapults. You have a big logistics tail that's very vulnerable to an enemy that's trying to stop you. So this is one of the hardest parts about building a scalable paradigm is, do you start from in the country? Do you start from boats offshore? Do you start from a neighboring country where you risk military escalation? And these are some of the reasons that I think drone delivery technology is not quite ready, is we haven't thought through the operating concept for how you do this at scale and make sure it's survivable. And this is where we need to put a lot of creative thought and energy into.
So finally, Mark, what do you think the future holds for delivery by drone in combat?
I do think it will be an increasingly important capability, but this is a long road. You see civilian companies have been trying for years to do it with marginal success. But my call is for government and DoD leaders to make the right investments, that we're going to keep facing situations where we need to move material through war zones into contested areas. And to do that, it's going to take a lot of government investment over a long time.
All right, Mark, thanks so much for joining us. Nice to talk to you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.